The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. Some officials from the executive department were a no-show in yesterday's Senate hearing on the government's contracts with Pharmally. This is after President Duterte barred cabinet officials from attending the probe. But senators are not giving up, warning the officials that they will still be asked questions in the respective budget hearings. Men Los Baños with the rest of the story.
Almost no one from the executive department were present in the resumption of the Senate's hearing on overpriced medical supplies. Officials from the Bureau of Internal Revenue and Commission on Audit were present in the 11th hearing, but senators said most of the questions are intended for those who were absent. This prompted Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Chairman Richard Gordon to lash out again at President Duterte. Duterte had issued a memorandum directing heads and employees of agencies involved in the government's pandemic response to ignore the legislative inquiry.
Mr. President, yung inissue yung memorandum is totally unconstitutional. Wala kayong karapatan dyan. You're violating the Constitution.
I cannot see any other memorandum as blatantly unconstitutional as what we have before us.
More allegations.
Senators questioned Pharmally Executive Crizel Magos' retraction of her previous testimony before the Senate. Senator Ping Lacson played parts of the hearing last September 24. Mago was present in the hearing along with supply chain manager Lincoln Ong, who initially said that he will not be cooperating with the proceedings anymore.
I suppose it was not on your own initiative that you gave that instruction, right?
I received the instructions from the PPC management, particularly Mr. Mohit Tergani.
You will the judge, Mr. Chairman, if that was a pressured response and if she was bullied by this representation.
Senator Kiko Pangilinan meanwhile tells the absent officials that their department budgets for 2022 are still pending in the Senate. He says questions involving Pharmally may still be raised in budget hearings. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
The Integrated Bar of the Philippines slams President Duterte's move to bar key officials from attending the Senate's hearing on Pharmally contracts. In a statement signed by all officials except the IBP governor for Eastern Mindanao, they call on President Duterte to reconsider his decision to bar his cabinet from attending the Senate investigation, saying that the executive department cannot refuse to comply with the Senate's demand for information, and that the government must unite in fighting off corruption. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. Some political personalities seeking spots at the lower and upper chambers of Congress have filed their certificates of candidacy early today. Let's get the latest with Greg Gregorio. He's reporting to us live from Pasay City. Greg, can you give us the latest?
Yes, Risa, good morning. The early birds in today's filing of COCs and CON are mostly party lists. This include the Malasakit Movement party list having former MNDA spokesperson Celine Pialago as their nominee. Afterwards, former DPWH Secretary Mark Villar and Senator Mig Subiri also filed their COC, as both of them are seeking seats in the upper house. Pialago says Malasakit Movement party list will push for health and insurance benefits of those frontline workers in the grassroots level, including barangay health workers, among others. They also aim to be the voice of solo parents, overseas Filipino workers, and their families. As someone who used to be part of the Transportation Department and the party list's first nominee, Pialago says she would also push for laws unifying policies in the transportation sector should they win a spot in the lower house. Malasakit Movement party list submitted 10 names of nominees, but COMELEC said party lists only get a maximum of 3 slots depending on the number of votes they will get. Next filer is Ang Bombero ng Pilipinas party list that aims to push for the creation of Magna Carta for volunteer firemen, noting they are the unsung heroes, especially in this time of the pandemic. Former DPWH Secretary Mark Villar has meanwhile filed his COC for senator but opted not to speak in front of the media. Senator Mig Subiri meanwhile filed his COC for re-election. Subiri clarified that despite filing his COC, he'll still focus on pending discussions in the Senate, including that for the 2022 budget and for the pandemic response. Among those he would also like to push for legislation should he win another term in the Senate is the Bayanihan 3. Subiri also mentioned that though he is running as independent senatorial aspirant, he has been adopted by both the Lacson Soto and Pacquiao Atienza for their senatorial slates. Risa, Pialago and Villar were both appointees of the current administration. Thus, both of them needed to resign from their appointive position prior to them filing CONA and COCs today. Risa?
Thank you for that update. That's Greg Gregorio reporting live from Pasay City. Now, a member of the Partido Federal ng Pilipinas shoots down hopes for a possible tandem between their standard bearer, former Senator Bongbong Marcos, and President Rodrigo Duterte. On One News Chiefs, PFP member Elmer Francisco says he and his colleagues are not considering a potential Bongbong Marcos-Rodrigo Duterte tandem in 2022. This even as the party espoused one of Duterte's main campaign promises, which is a shift to federalism. Francisco said that although President Duterte made a handful of achievements during his term, his administration still has its own shortcomings, including those in terms of foreign policy.
Walang taong perpekto. Kasama si Pangulong Duterte ron. So marami siya nagawa, pero meron din siya mga pagkukulang. So yung mga pagkukulang na yon ang mga pinag-aaralan natin na maaaring maayos or mabago or magawa ni Senator Bongbong Marcos na mas maayos.
Now, though a Bongbong-Rodi tandem is unlikely, Narvacan Mayor Chavit Singson says there are still hopes that Marcos will form a tandem with presidential daughter Sara Duterte. Singson tells One News the big story that if Sara changes her mind and decides to vie for the presidency by November 15, Marcos may give way and allow Sara to run for president.
Posible yun dahil magandang either or, si Bongbong o si Sara ang presidente, isa sa kanila magandang team yun, North and South.
Facebook's worldwide crash brought down services for almost 2 billion people, forcing them to use other social media platforms. This outage couldn't have come at a worse time for the tech giant, as the crash occurred only days before a Facebook whistleblower appears before the U.S. Senate. Let's watch this.
The stoppage had immediate implications, sending people scrambling to search for alternative services. Millions of people flocked to alternative messaging apps, Signal and Telegram. It also comes amid a particularly difficult stretch for the company, as a former employee turned whistleblower is set to testify before a Senate subcommittee on Tuesday. The stoppage also could bolster claims that Facebook needs stricter regulatory oversight given the company's size and importance. Facebook's apps sometimes have glitches, but they rarely last for more than a few minutes. Monday's outage was one of the longest and most widespread failures in recent memory. The fact that such a stoppage happened means that people are now cognizant that that kind of event could reoccur.
Meanwhile, Microsoft launched Windows 11 worldwide on Tuesday, its first major update of the PC operating system in 6 years. Let's check out the fresh face of Windows on this Bloomberg Quick Take.
The past 18 months have reminded us how essential the PC is to work, life, learning, and connecting. And with Windows 11, we have renewed sense of the role Windows plays in the world. It offers personal agency and real choice to users.
Now here's a quick look at some of today's headlines. Experts speculate that Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will use the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago's People's Reform Party to run for higher office. Vice President Leni Robredo is set to make her big announcement tomorrow on whether or not she will run for president. And Labor leader Calyodi de Guzman is set to file his COC for president this afternoon. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on a Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.